There was a time when Sir Michael Caine stood unstoppable, the sharp-tongued London boy who rose from nothing to become one of cinema's most beloved icons. But behind the charm and the effortless wit, time was quietly closing in. At 92, the man who once defied every obstacle now faces battles no camera ever captured. Loss, frailty, and the heartbreak of watching life shrink around him. This is the tragedy the world never expected. For most of his life, Sir Michael Caine carried an aura of indestructibility. He wasn't just an actor. He was persistence, personified, from the poverty-stricken streets of South London to the heights of Hollywood. He survived wars, rejection, heartbreak, and the brutal grind of an industry that rarely forgives. Yet, through it all, he walked with that unmistakable confidence. The glasses, the sharp wit, the voice that made even ordinary lines unforgettable. But time, as it always does, began its silent work. It didn't arrive with drama or sudden catastrophe. It came quietly, in the form of slowed footsteps, blurred vision, and mornings where the body refused to rise as quickly as the mind hoped. For decades, Michael had built his career on reliability. He showed up, delivered, improvised, charmed, and transformed. But somewhere in his late 80s, he realized something he had spent a lifetime avoiding. Even legends have limits. His joints ached, his back stiffened, and the once effortless stride became cautious. Friends noticed the subtle changes first, the way he reached for support, the way he sat a little longer before standing, the way his once sparkling energy dimmed after long conversations. Michael dismissed it with humor at first. "Old age isn't for sissies," he'd say, laughing. But privately, the truth weighed on him. He had lived through eras, seen the world change, cinema transform, society evolve. And now he found himself watching life grow smaller around him. Roles he once embraced with ease became too physically demanding. Scripts arrived, but the thought of 12-hour film days felt impossible. Even attending award shows, once a joyful celebration, became exhausting journeys filled with pain, disguised behind polite smiles. There were moments when he'd stare at his walking cane, the one he tried not to rely on too often, and feel a quiet grief no audience would ever see. For a man who had always stood tall, the cane wasn't just support. It was a symbol of surrender, not to weakness, but to time itself. And then came the greatest blow, the loss of friends, colleagues, and the familiar faces who had filled his world for decades. He outlived nearly all of them. His phone rang less often, the house felt larger, quieter, even laughter, once effortless, required memory to echo. The loneliness of survival is a pain only the elderly truly understand, and Michael felt it deeply, even when he pretended he didn't. Yet, through all of it, he maintained that warm, self-deprecating charm. He joked about retirement, joked about age, joked about mortality. But beneath the humor was a man slowly letting go, not because he wanted to, but because he no longer had the strength to hold on, the way he once did. The world saw the icon. He felt the frailty. And in that contrast lies the tragedy of Sir Michael Caine at 92. A man who gave everything to the world, only to find the world growing quieter around him. But the story doesn't end here. Because behind every quiet struggle was something deeper, unspoken fears, private losses, and the emotional wounds he carried long before age began to show. And those truths reveal the most heartbreaking chapter of all. For Sir Michael Caine, aging wasn't just the slow weakening of the body. It was the unbearable weight of memory. As the years stacked higher, he found himself living in a world that no longer resembled the one he had fought so hard to rise from. The people who shaped him, challenged him, loved him, and stood beside him in his greatest triumphs, had begun disappearing one by one, leaving behind photos, stories, and a silence that cut deeper than any physical pain. Michael was never one to show vulnerability. He crafted a public persona built on humor, resilience, and a kind of old-fashioned masculinity that refused to bend. But grief has a way of slipping through the cracks. It began subtly. The pauses in interviews when someone mentioned an old friend, the softened tone when he spoke of actors who were once part of his journey. He often said that outliving people was the cruelest privilege. And he meant it. He survived wars. He survived childhood poverty. He survived the ruthless nature of Hollywood. But surviving everyone else? That was a battle he never wanted to win. The death of his close friends hit him hardest. Sean Connery, with whom he shared decades of friendship, banter, and the bond of being British icons abroad. Roger Moore, whose humor matched his own. Michael's circle wasn't just shrinking, it was collapsing. These weren't just colleagues. They were his anchors, reminders of youth, of camaraderie, of the days when life felt full and urgent. With each loss, Michael felt another part of his past quietly detach and drift away. Even his relationship with his own work became shadowed by melancholy. Films he once watched with pride became bittersweet reminders of faces and voices now gone. When he revisited old roles, he saw not just characters, he saw ghosts. He saw the man he used to be, the world he used to know. And behind every smile on screen was a life no longer within reach. He also carried emotional wounds from long before age slowed him. His difficult childhood, marked by poverty, absence, and instability, lingered even in success. Michael often joked that fame didn't erase trauma, it just dressed it up. But the truth was deeper. In old age, childhood pains often come back louder, because the mind finally has the quiet to hear them. And for Michael, quiet was now everywhere. His wife, Shakira, remained his greatest comfort, a stabilizing force in a life filled with upheaval. She often said that she saw sides of him the world never would. His insecurities, his regrets, his fears of becoming a burden. Michael adored her. But even love couldn't protect him from the ache of knowing that his world had become small, still, and dimmer by the year. The hardest part wasn't the frailty. It wasn't the cane, or the slowed gait, or the tremor in his voice. The hardest part was feeling life shrink around him. The conversations that no longer happened, the phone calls that never came, the friends who were now memories. He was still here, but the life he once knew wasn't. And yet, he carried on with dignity, refusing to let the world see the full weight of his sorrow. Because that's who Michael Caine had always been, a man who endured silently, who survived more than most ever will, and who kept standing long after tragedy should have broken him. But beneath that strength lies the most devastating truth of all, that his final years, though filled with love, were marked by a loneliness even fame could not touch. And this leads us to the final and most heartbreaking chapter of his story. The moment when he realized it was finally time to say goodbye. By the time Sir Michael Caine reached his 90s, the question was no longer whether he could keep acting. It was whether he still wanted to. For a man who had spent more than 70 years in front of cameras, stepping away was not a simple decision. Acting had been his escape from childhood trauma, his bridge to friendship, his shield against the chaos of life. But now, even that familiar refuge felt distant. The world of filmmaking demanded long hours, physical strength, and mental endurance. All things Michael knew he no longer had to give. The truth revealed itself slowly. moment by moment. First came the struggle to remember longer lines. Then came the difficulty in standing for extended takes. Eventually, even walking onto a set became an exhausting effort. Yet the deeper pain wasn't physical, it was emotional. The roles being offered were no longer the charming rogues or sharp-witted heroes he once embodied. They were characters defined by frailty, by age, by endings. He accepted them gracefully, but privately, he felt the sting of inevitability. "They're not hiring me," he once joked. "They're hiring an old man." But behind the humor was the quiet ache of confronting a reality he had avoided his entire life. He could no longer outrun time. Then came the day he finally admitted it. In an interview that rippled across the world, Michael revealed he was stepping away from acting for good. His voice was calm, steady, almost matter-of-fact. But audiences could hear the sorrow between the words. "I'm 90, he said. "There aren't many scripts for men my age." It wasn't bitterness, it was acceptance. Yet retirement brought its own kind of grief. For the first time, Michael found himself facing long stretches of silence. Days without lines to memorize, sets to visit, or characters to inhabit. The busyness that once shaped his purpose had vanished. His life became quieter, slower, more solitary. Friends and colleagues gently said he had earned his rest. But rest is only peaceful when one chooses it, not when it's imposed by time. Still, there were bright spots. His grandchildren brought warmth to his quiet days. Shakira, his unwavering partner, filled the house with care and stability, and every so often, Michael would sit by the window, watching the London light shift across the room, reflecting on a life so extraordinary that even he sometimes struggled to believe it had all happened. But late in the evenings, when the house settled and the world grew still, he sometimes felt the weight of everything he had survived. Childhood poverty, the war, Hollywood, the deaths of friends, the loneliness of fame, the heavy ache of outliving nearly everyone he had loved. And then, one day, he said something that broke hearts around the world. "I'm fading. That's what old age is, a slow fade." It wasn't despair, it wasn't fear, it was acceptance. Spoken by a man who had lived long enough to understand that life is not defined by how long it lasts, but by the light it leaves behind. Sir Michael Caine's slow goodbye is not dramatic or sudden. It's tender, quiet, human. The kind of ending no one teaches you how to face. The ending where the body weakens, the world shrinks, and the memories become heavier than anything else you carry. Yet even as he fades from the public eye, his legacy remains impossibly bright. His films continue to inspire new generations. His voice continues to echo through cinema, and his presence, humble, brave, unforgettable, remains a reminder that even legends are human, and even icons must eventually let go. Because for Michael, this final chapter isn't about fame or film or applause. It's about finding peace after a lifetime of fighting. It's about love, reflection, and the quiet grace of accepting that even the greatest stories must someday close their final page. And with that acceptance, his journey leads gently into the only thing left: the legacy he leaves behind. Sir Michael Caine's story proves even legends aren't spared from time's cruelty. His strength, humor, and humanity remain, but the weight of age has carved a quieter, lonelier world around him. Yet his legacy endures, glowing long after the spotlight fades. If his journey moved you, like and subscribe for more untold stories.